Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by NDIS Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hi everyone, my name is Min and I'm your host for today from NDIS Property Australia here in Brisbane, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing world. Currently I'm unable to attend the podcast, but I've asked Rob to stand in for me, and Rob Maxwell from Melbourne is interviewing on the podcast there today Michael Brown from One Contract Property. And together they will be talking about the services of One Contract Property, which is specifically related to investors who are in the SMSF environments, who want to consider looking at buying an NDIS or any property, in fact, which is normally a two-part contract, a house and land package contract, and convert it into a one contract property. Yes? Rob, I'll hand it over to Rob right now. Thank you.
Okay, welcome to our latest podcast episode. Today we're with Michael Brown, who's the National Project and Development Manager for One Contract Property. Hi Michael, how are you?
Yeah, good Rob. Thanks for having us along on today's session. Looking forward to covering off about what we do.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So Michael, tell us more about you and what One Contract Property does.
Yeah, look, One Contract Property come to market in 2020. We realised there was a gaping hole in the industry around single part contracts. And it really come about from a couple of NDIS deals, probably early 2020, that clients at the last minute, they were two-part contracts, land and house, and wanted to put inside their superannuation. And without creating a complicated tax structure, it really raised our eyebrows as a business, and that's where the business was born, around the fact that how do we create a single part contract and give people in Australia choice of property, location, builder, and product type, and that's where it all started. We went out and sourced warehouse funding. We had 13, 14 businesses vying for the product. And essentially, we were bringing to the market something that had never been done before, that had been done in small doses with some builders, but not on a large national scale to the effect of, unlimited amount of single part contracts. And that's how we come about. Okay,
great. So you mentioned you started a couple of years ago in 2020. Let's go into a little bit more detail of how an actual one contract property transaction works. And if you can, let's compare it to a normal two-part contract for a house and land build that most of our listeners will understand and be used to.
Yeah, look, the process, essentially, we're adding an additional contract. There's still a land contract in play, a build contract in play, and then One Contract Property essentially mirror the terms and conditions of both of those contracts and issue a single-part contract to the self-managed super fund purchaser. Client now, as I said before, has choice of property, location and builder and product type. We run the land, the build price through our One Contract Property calculator, and it produces a single part contract price that the client pays a 35% deposit out of their self-managed super fund to One Contract Property that's released. We use those funds to assist in settling on the land, because One Contract Property become the owner of the land on behalf of the super fund, and we also enter into the build contract with the said builder around the country. So we then essentially fund the deal, construction fund the deal all the way through to completion, and the client picks up a completed property at the back end, which they long-term fund the debt under the LRBA, recourse borrowing, and have a property inside their superannuation fund.
Okay, great. And what I probably should have mentioned, a lot of listeners probably don't understand why this is needed. bit of a background, for a superannuation fund, it does have to be a single contract. You can't have the two, based around the rules of superannuation. And you mentioned the limited recourse borrowing arrangement. That's just the rules around which superannuation funds operate in Australia that we have to work with. So that's obviously your target market, being self-managed super funds. Is there any other type of property investors that would use this service?
Yeah, look, it's been used whilst it was developed for SMSF through its time. We've used it in multitude of ranges. We've got builders that are using it for display home funding. Quite challenging sometimes to be able to go to a bank and get display home funding for that type of project. So essentially, under the same rules of a single part contract, it gives them the ability to we can fund their display homes without having to fund it out of their own capital. Clients that can't get construction funding. Again, they can go. They may be in between jobs and they're out of their, they're not finished their period of employment. That they can go to a financial institution and get funding for a property, but want to get into the property market. The opportunity is there to grab and use the single part contract model and go to a bank at completion with a completed product and long-term fund the debt. We're also engaged nationally with. And we get calls every week from developers. So again, we do development funding as well, and they can range from $2 million to $50 million projects. Essentially, we look at those on a case-by-case basis, but they're the core facets of what the product's being used for nationally every week.
Okay, great. And what advice would you give our listeners who are thinking about setting up a self-managed super fund with the main aim initially to purchase one of these house and land packages using their superannuation money? Is there anything that they should think about or look out for, or any traps that they have to be aware of?
Yeah, look, I think in today's society, and we're off the back of the second year of most industry funds returning a neutral or negative result. People are certainly starting to be aware and want to take control of their financial future. I'm probably a prime example. My wife and I, before we actually launched the solution back in 2020, had wanted to do SMSF for a long time. Found a really good financial planner that mapped out our future all the way through to retirement. And we really compared what an industry fund would look like long-term as opposed to property. We've always been very property-centric people, loved investing and buying property. And the opportunity to take advantage of the self-managed super fund industry and the tax benefits and advantages for setting up financial freedom in retirement has always been attractive. So, fast forward 2.5 years from us buying a property, which was a single part contract property. It was we were limited to what we could buy back then because our product wasn't available. So we bought a display home on the Gold Coast, and we're just in the process, I guess, of selling that, having picked up $300,000 worth of uplift in value. And we're now about to buy and build under one contract property 2 new projects, which will be a duplex and an NDIS property, to again take our growth in our long-term future through to another area using self-managed super, house and land, and one contract property.
Okay, great. Specifically in relation to what we're doing here, doing the NDIS SDA houses, in relation to a super fund, there's a couple of significant benefits that people need to be aware of. One, it gives them access to the funds that they've already got in superannuation. So if you're looking for a higher deposit or haven't got the funds personally, obviously that's a great advantage. But Michael also touched on then that there are tax advantages to do this. When you're talking a SDA NDIS home that might be yielding 8, 9, 10% income per annum, if that was in your own name, you're obviously taxable at your marginal rate, which could be 30 or 40, 45%, depending on the individual. The advantage in the super fund, of course, is that the tax rate's lower. I think it's still 15%. Then you've also got advantages with the capital gains tax if you decide to sell in future. Michael, I'm not sure whether you know, but I'm assuming it's still 10% tax on that.
Yeah, it is.
And then the other thing investors should be aware of is that if they hold these properties for long enough into retirement, then there's even better tax advantages in that it can potentially be exempt from tax once they're in retirement pension phase. Just a question, Michael, what other special services do you offer or have you got access to via some partners that you might be dealing with in terms of setting up the SMSF initially that people can tap into by using your company? You able to just give us an idea there?
Yeah, look, I guess the products allowed us to chat to a wide range of groups, financial planners, accountants, mortgage brokers, builders around the country, and all those people that are in that. As a business, we do have the ability now to set up an SMSF. So take a client from thinking about an SMSF to sitting in front of a financial planner, mapping out their financial future, having a look at what's going to look like, having their SMSF set up, their industry funds rolled over, and then really utilise the property networks. And depending on, they've got choice now. They can pick an NDIS property from your group. They can pick a co-living, a duplex, a dual key. They can have choice of location with whatever fits into their requirements around that. It really, we're essentially a one-stop shop in that space, but we're really here, One Contract Property is here to really provide the solution that gives people that ability.
Okay, great. What you're probably not aware of is I was a financial planner for 20 years by background, so obviously have a pretty good understanding of this. And I'm sensitive as well in that there's regulatory issues around what you can do in your super fund. You mentioned that you have financial advisors. People just need to be careful in doing this, that they've got a strategy in place that fits what they're looking for in regard to their future financial freedom. Have you any comments to add there? Is there anything that's changed that's relevant to One Contract Property over the last couple of years from a regulatory point of view?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. Really, I mean, we all want to stick to the lanes we're good at. We're providing a solution and we can provide the property piece. I think people really need to reach out to those industry professionals in the right areas to get the right advice under legislation. And certainly the ATO is cracking down because industry funds are driving. I mean, people are moving out of industry funds at a rapid rate. I think at the moment in Australia, there's 750 SMSFs get set up a week. So it's an increasing number that's growing rapidly because people really want to take control around that solution. But certainly we operate under an ATO public product ruling, so our company operates under that. So, and we've also got the ticket accreditation from ASIC as well. So certainly the key things when we're dealing with financial planners and accountants that they want to know that the solution works and it fits in with the legislation requirements nationally for people.
Okay, great. Good to hear. All right, Michael, what's the best way that our listeners can find out more about your company and what you do, and how can they get in touch with you in the future?
Yeah, look, we I guess the best place is our website, onecontractproperty.com.au. Certainly there's some forms, there's a lot of information on there for clients in terms of taking those steps to set up SMSF. We are about to embark nationally on the National Disability Expo, the Property Expo, so we'll be at all of those in each of the states coming up around the next 6 to 12 months. And certainly we're out and about, social media-wise. If you want to check out our socials, we're on all the platforms. There's certainly a lot of informative information and ways to get in touch with the team and the group to find out more. Okay,
great. All right. Thanks, Michael. I think that's covers everything in regard to how people can look to set up a self-managed fund, use your services at One Contract Property to set up the legal structure to be able to invest in the SDA homes. Anything else to add, or we'll leave it there?
No, look, I really appreciate the time to come and have a chat. Thanks for reaching out, and look forward to, obviously, the listeners being able to take some steps in taking control of their future.
Great. And hopefully you'll have contact from a number of our listeners going forward that realise this now is a good alternative to doing these projects in their own name.
Thanks very much for your time, Rob.
No worries. Thanks, Michael.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.